Well, it's coming to the end of the day. I thought I would bring up something. I had a communication from the powers that be at YouTube this morning. They weren't going to give me a strike, but they how was it? Oh, they had problems with one of my videos. And the funny part is it's never what you would think it would be, you know, a video that you would think would be a problem. It's usually some innocuous video that would seem relatively harmless, but they will try to find some way to nail you on that one. And that's what they're doing. The video in question was avoiding, it was to do with when I was spraying spurge and trying not to spray the hemp. I just did that like a week or two ago. Avoiding collateral damage, that's what it was called. So they put an age restriction on that one. You know, it's what YouTube does. But it was just to show me kind of that they're kind of paying attention. Though, like I said, there was nothing in that could possibly be construed as failing their guidelines. I don't know what they're thinking on that. But, you know, the first temptation, and you might as well take it down. And I could take it down, but there would be no point in it. You know, the video has already served its purpose. There was no reason to do anything with it. And so they demonetized it. Well, they had already demonetized it right away as soon as I put it up. And I have no idea why there either. I mean, there again, sometimes this stuff is a mystery to me. But, like I said, they weren't giving me a strike, but they were kind of like putting me on notice that, you know, toe the line or else. So I thought I'd poke them a little bit again. Now, I don't know which thing to go at. I got like 3 things I want to talk about, but if I do all of them, it'll be a horrendously long video. I think maybe the one to go at now, the one that's the most timely, is to do with this. Again, when they made a new moratorium on evictions and foreclosures. Now, this is a kind of a spooky deal. You know, the one expired on Saturday, and it had already been ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So you think, okay, this is the end of that. But they did a tricky thing, or they did like an irresponsible kind of thing. They made a new one, slightly different from the old one, but barely, and that's in effect for 60 days. Now, their theory behind doing this is that the Supreme Court, as slow as they are, they won't get around to condemning this before it expires. You know, so they just and it wasn't, you know, they're making it sound like Biden didn't do it. This was the CDC that did it. Now, the spooky thing is, there's being a precedent set there where they can do anything they want until the Supreme Court catches up to them. And they think this is perfectly fine to do it this way. Got a tickle in my throat. This always happens when I start this. But they changed this new moratorium on the evictions and foreclosures so that it only covers the areas where this virus is rampant once again, or the new one. If they can show that the numbers have climbed in certain areas, well, these certain areas cover approximately 90% of the country. So they're claiming that this isn't the same as the other one. This was like an emergency thing. But there's a lot of stuff they could do that with and claim it's an emergency. Everything to them is a great disaster and a hell of an emergency. And by doing it this way, they can bypass the Supreme Court until the court catches up to them. But if they can juggle the numbers, which they've been doing all along, like how many cases there are and all this stuff, they constantly play with the numbers. So in certain areas, they're playing with the numbers to get this extended. Now it turns out, that this is happening in the blue states. Well, but there again, there's a thing about this. When you say red state, blue state. Somebody brought this up one time. There really isn't blue states. There's blue cities. A lot of times, like if you look at the map, the blue area of a state is a very small area confined to the cities. So basically, that's what this is covering. This new moratorium will be covering democratically controlled cities. That they can't foreclose or evict people. But in other parts of the country, they could. But it was interesting the way they did it. Because there's nothing then to say that they couldn't say they're going to start confiscating guns and go ahead and do it until the Supreme Court catches up and says it's unconstitutional. This is a precedent that they're setting that is a very dangerous thing. But that really is what their idea was. Well, we'll just do it until they make us quit doing it. Knowing that the Supreme Court is dragging ass all the time. So this will be interesting to see. Because there's really, there's nothing, no consequences for this. They can pull something like this. Like I say, this will be done, before the Supreme Court gets to it. They've got this fund set aside that is supposed to be to pay the landlords. Their hope is to get this money to them before the Supreme Court shuts this operation down. Well, that's a slippery way to do it. But then, right away what's going to happen is that this money that's supposed to go to these landlords will only go to the landlords in democratically controlled cities. Because this is where the pandemic is really raging, It's an interesting thing. And all of the constitutional scholars looking at this were freaking out, saying, what in the world are you doing? But they managed to drum up a couple of them that said, I think we can pull this off. And that's what they're going with. They're it's funny. Well, we'll make supper. But it's worrisome that, it's always been, for the Democrats, they are trying to uphold the Constitution. Their whole scheme is to work around it. Always trying to work some little angle that they can get around the restrictions that the Constitution places on them. And now they're just making use of the inability of the Supreme Court to actually get anything done in a timely manner. It's funny. But they think this is a clever move. They think this is a very clever move. And like I say, even, when the Supreme Court does finally get around to shutting them down, it'll be too late. The horse will be out of the barn. But if this works for them, I think you can expect to see this sort of thing happen on other stuff. Like even mandating vaccinations. They really want to do that, and they could do it. They could really push this until the Supreme Court shuts them down. I heard a little thing about Rand Paul was talking when they were doing this mask mandate again, because they really want to shut everything down again. That's where their power is. So if they can do that, if they can get everybody back to where you were, this whole thing of people trying to get back to their normal lives, they don't like that. Their power is in keeping you shut down. But Rand Paul, he was right in what he said. Just don't comply. If you don't comply, they get their power from you. If you just say, I refuse to comply, that's pretty much the end of their power. They can rant and carry on, but their power comes from you. Just don't let them have it. Just don't comply. And he was right. But his dad has always been right. I'm not surprised that he's generally pretty damn right. But they're really looking to do it again. That's where the new virus, because they couldn't keep retreading that old one that was wearing really thin. So now you got a new one to work with. Yeah, well, I simply will not comply.